The air in the Strategic Command Center at panic moments always smelled the same: stale coffee, ozone from the server racks, and the sharp, metallic scent of high-grade anxiety. This was the Iron Hawk exercises, the Pentagon's most prestigious and classified annual war game. Deep inside the bunker, buried 300 feet beneath the Virginia soil, the walls were lined with massive screens displaying satellite feeds, topographical maps, and real-time troop movements. The room was filled with the best of the best: Army Rangers, Air Force strategists, and at the center of the storm, Admiral Marcus Bulldog Sterling. Sterling was a Navy SEAL legend. He was 6'4", with a jaw like a granite block and a chest full of ribbons that told stories of battles in places that didn't officially exist. He paced the floor like a caged tiger, barking orders at the young captains and majors manning the terminals. In the back corner of the room, sitting quietly at a small, uncluttered desk, was Eleanor Vance. Eleanor was 62. She wore a sensible gray cardigan, reading glasses on a chain, and orthopedic shoes. She had a cup of tea in front of her and a crossword puzzle half finished in her lap. To the high-octane warriors in the room, she looked like she had wandered in from a public library or a church bake sale. She had been sent by the Department of Defense as an external observer, a vague title that usually meant a bureaucrat sent to tick boxes. Admiral Sterling had been ignoring her for 3 hours. But as the simulation began to drag and tensions rose, her quiet presence started to irritate him. He felt she was out of place, a civilian grandmother in a room of wolves. During a brief lull in the exercise, Sterling walked over to the coffee station near her desk. He poured himself a black coffee, then turned to look down at her. "Enjoying the show, ma'am?" Sterling asked, his voice booming. Eleanor looked up over her reading glasses. Her eyes were a piercing, icy blue that contrasted sharply with her soft demeanor. "It is certainly, loud Admiral," she replied softly. Sterling chuckled, looking around the room to ensure his subordinates were listening to the banter. "War is loud, ma'am. It's not like organizing the filing cabinets at the VA office." A few young officers snickered. Eleanor didn't blink, she just took a sip of her tea. "So," Sterling continued, leaning against her desk, invading her personal space, "I see your badge says Observer. But in this room, rank matters. Everyone here has earned their seat with blood and sweat. I'm just curious. What is your rank, or did you just win a raffle to come watch the big boys play?" It was a joke, a cruel, dismissive joke meant to assert his dominance and remind everyone that he was the alpha in the room. Eleanor folded her newspaper slowly. She placed it on the desk, aligning the edges perfectly. "I don't hold a rank anymore, Admiral," she said, her voice steady and devoid of fear. "I'm retired." "Retired from what?" Sterling laughed. "The PTA, the knitting circle?" "Something like that," Eleanor said, turning her gaze back to the main screen where the simulation was running. "You might want to check your eastern flank, Admiral. Your Bravo team is walking into a kill box." Sterling stopped laughing. He looked at the screen. "Don't be ridiculous. Bravo is in stealth mode. The sensors are clear." "The sensors are clear because the enemy is using thermal blankets and moving through the drainage tunnels," Eleanor said, sounding bored. "It's the standard defense for this terrain. I would move them." Sterling scoffed. "I think I know how to run a SEAL team, lady. Stick to your crossword." He turned his back on her and walked away. 10 seconds later, the main screen flashed red. "Bravo team, eliminatd." The room went dead silent. Sterling stared at the screen, his coffee cup freezing in his hand. He spun around to look at the gray-haired woman in the corner, but she had already picked up her pen and returned to 4 down. The loss of Bravo team was a humiliation, but Sterling chalked it up to a glitch in the simulation software. He was a man who believed in brute force and superior firepower, and he wasn't about to let a lucky guess by a civilian rattle him. "Reset the board," Sterling barked. "Scenario 2, the mountain fortress. Let's see if the red team can handle a direct assault." Scenario 2 was infamous. It was the Iron Hawk signature scenario, a hostage rescue mission in a mountain stronghold surrounded by anti-air batteries and miles of open ground. It was designed to be nearly impossible, a test of how commanders handled failure. The simulation rebooted. The screen showed a digital rendering of a snowy mountain peak. "Alpha team, insert via halo jump at 30,000 feet, Sterling ordered. "Charlie team, provide suppression fire from the ridge." The room buzzed with activity. Commanders relayed orders. The simulation played out. Within minutes, disaster struck. The anti-air batteries were more sensitive than anticipated. The transport planes were tagged before the jumpers could exit. Mission failure. Sterling slammed his fist on the table. Again, reset. Try a ground approach from the south. They reset. They tried the south. The digital troops were mowed down by hidden machine gun nests. Mission failure. Again, Sterling was sweating now. His reputation was on the line. This exercise was being monitored by the Joint Chiefs. Night insertion, river approach. Mission failure. The room was thick with tension. For 2 hours, the most brilliant military minds in the room threw everything they had at the simulation. Drones, airstrikes, covert insertions. Every time the enemy AI anticipated the move and crushed them. Sterling was red-faced, his breathing heavy. He leaned over the central map table, defeated. "It's impossible," he muttered. "The scenario is rigged. There's no way in." From the back corner, the soft voice drifted through the silence. "There is one way." Sterling whipped his head around. Elena was standing now. She had pushed her tea aside. She walked slowly toward the center of the room. The sea of uniformed officers parted for her, mostly out of confusion. "You have something to say," Sterling snapped. "Unless you have a magic wand, sit down." "I don't have a wand, Admiral," Elena said, stopping at the edge of the map table. She looked at the digital mountain. "But I know this mountain, and I know why you're failing." "This is a computer-generated mountain, lady," Sterling said. "You don't know it." "No," Elena corrected him. "The topography is based on the Hindu Kush range, specifically the Valley of Tears. The AI behavior is modeled after the warlord Khalil al-Hassan's defense grid from the late 90s. Sterling paused. She was right about the geography. That was classified information. So, Sterling challenged, "Even if it is a direct assault fails, we've proved that." "You're failing because you're thinking like a hammer," Elena said, her eyes locking onto his. "You see a fortress, so you want to smash it, but al-Hassan didn't build a fortress to keep people out. He built it to lure people in." She reached out and tapped the screen, right on a sheer cliff face that looked impassable. "Here," she said, "the chimney." "That's a 2,000-foot vertical drop," a major interjected. "You can't land there and you can't climb it without being seen." "You don't climb it," Elena said. "You fall into it. There's a thermal vent here. The updraft confuses the radar. If you cut chutes at 500 feet and flare hard, you can land on this ledge. It's 4 feet wide. From there, you enter the ventilation shaft." Sterling stared at her. "That's suicide. No pilot would fly that and no jumper would attempt it. It's not in the manual." "It's not in the manual because it's never been officially declassified," Elena said. "But it works." "And how would you know?" Sterling demanded. "Did you read about it in a spy novel?" Elena didn't answer. She looked at the comms officer. "Give me the headset." The officer looked at Sterling. Sterling hesitated. The room was silent. They had failed 5 times. He had nothing left to lose. "Give it to her," Sterling grunted. "Let's watch her crash the plane." Elena put on the headset. It looked too big for her gray head. She adjusted the microphone. Her posture changed. She didn't stand like an old woman anymore. She stood with her weight balanced, her chin up, her hands resting lightly on the console. "Alpha Leader, this is Command." Elena spoke into the mic. Her voice had changed too. The softness was gone. It was crisp, authoritative, and terrifyingly calm. "Go ahead, Command," the simulation pilot replied. "Abort current vector," Elena ordered. "New coordinates, 34.5 north, 69.2 east. Approach vector Sierra Zulu." "Command, that puts us right into the cliff face," the pilot argued. "That's a collision course." "Trust the instruments, Alpha," Elena said. "On my mark, cut engines and glide. You are looking for a thermal signature reading 400 degrees. It will look like a glitch on your HUD. It is not a glitch. Aim for it." Sterling watched the screen. The transport plane on the display banked hard, flying dangerously close to the digital mountain. "She's going to kill them," Sterling muttered. "Wait," the sensor operator said. "I see it. There's a blind spot in the enemy radar. The mountain is shielding the approach." Elena's eyes narrowed. "Alpha, drop payload now." On the screen, the digital SEAL team jumped. It wasn't a standard jump. They plummeted into the dark abyss of the cliffside. "Flare at 600, Elena commanded. "Target the ledge." The room held its breath. The icons on the screen turned green, then yellow, then. Touchdown confirmed. They made it, the Major whispered. They're on the ledge. Sterling's mouth opened slightly. Alpha Team, enter the vent, Alina continued. Switch to suppressors. You will encounter 2 guards at the junction. Drop them. Do not use radios. The rock amplifies the signal. She guided them through the complex like she had built it herself. Left at the fork. Trapdoor on the floor. Bypass it. It's rigged. Breach the 3rd door. It was flawless. The digital team moved through the unassailable fortress like ghosts. They reached the hostage. They secured the target. They extracted via the same vent. Mission accomplished. The screen flashed green. Time elapsed 14 minutes. The room erupted, not in cheers, but in a stunned, confused murmur. They had just watched a grandmother in orthopedic shoes out-general the entire joint staff. Alina took off the headset. She placed it gently on the desk. She smoothed her cardigan. Sterling stared at her. He felt like the floor was tilting. He walked over to her, no longer invading her space, but standing at a respectful distance. "Who are you?" Sterling asked. His voice was quiet. "I told you," Alina said. "I'm an observer." "No," Sterling shook his head. "Civilians don't know about the thermal vents in the Hindu Kush. Civilians don't know the Sierra Zulu approach. That approach, that's a myth. We call it the ghost drop in the mess hall. Nobody actually does it." "It's not a myth," Alina said. "It's just hard." "You asked for my rank earlier, Admiral," Alina said, turning to face him fully. "I told you I don't have one anymore, but 30 years ago, when I was working for a different agency, I didn't have a rank either. I had a code name." Sterling's eyes widened. He looked at the tactics she had used, the aggression, the precision, the way she used the enemy's strength against them. "The Iron Hawk," Sterling whispered. "The name of the exercise." "Iron Hawk isn't a bird, is it?" Sterling asked, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "It's not a metaphor." "It was a call sign," Alina said. The silence in the room was absolute. "You're the Hawk," Sterling said. "The CIA operative who organized the resistance in the northern valleys in '92, the one who infiltrated the Al-Hassan compound alone." "I wasn't alone," Alina corrected him. "I had a radio." "My God," the major behind Sterling whispered. "We studied you at the academy, but the books said you were a man. They said Elian Vance." "Elian sounded better on the paperwork than Alina," she smiled faintly. "And the agency preferred it that way." Sterling looked at the woman he had mocked. He had asked if she belonged to a knitting circle. This woman had likely forgotten more about infiltration and asymmetric warfare than Sterling had ever learned. She wasn't just a participant in history. She was the reason the simulation existed. The Iron Hawk exercise was named after her most famous mission, the mission she had just reenacted from memory. "You built the scenario," Sterling said. "I designed the defense grid for the simulation," Alina nodded. "The Pentagon asked me to create something unbeatable to test the new generation. I thought it would be amusing to see if anyone could figure out the backdoor I left open 30 years ago." "And we failed," Sterling said, feeling the weight of his arrogance. "You failed because you were arrogant," Alina said, not unkindly. "You looked at the problem and saw only your own strength. You didn't look for the nuance. You didn't look for the quiet spaces." She picked up her purse. "You mocked my age, Admiral. You mocked my gender. You assumed that because I don't wear a uniform, I have no fight left in me." She stepped closer to him, and for the first time, Sterling realized that she was actually quite tall. "Wars aren't won by the loudest voice in the room, Marcus. They are won by the people who notice the thermal vents. They are won by the people who listen." Sterling stood there for a long moment. He was a proud man. He was a stubborn man. But he was also a soldier who respected competence above all else, and he had just witnessed competence that bordered on the supernatural. He looked around the room. His men were watching him. They were waiting to see what the bulldog would do. Sterling took a deep breath. He squared his shoulders. "Room attention," he barked. The sound was thunderous. Every officer in the room snapped to their feet, heels clicking together. Sterling turned to Alina. He didn't offer a hand to shake. That would be too casual. He raised his right hand slowly, deliberately, and snapped a crisp, perfect salute. It was a breach of protocol. You don't salute civilians. But nobody in that room dared to correct him. They knew who she was now. She was the architect of the very ground they walked on. "Ma'am," Sterling said, his voice ringing with genuine respect. "I apologize, I was out of line, and I was wrong." Alina looked at him, her expression softened. She nodded, acknowledging the gesture. "At ease, Admiral," she said. She turned to the door. "I have a roast in the slow cooker, and I believe I've seen enough for today. Your report will note that the team shows promise, but needs to work on humility." "Yes, ma'am," Sterling said. As Alina walked toward the heavy blast doors, Sterling called out one last time. "Ma'am." She paused, hand on the doorframe. "Yes, Admiral." "That mission in '92, the real one?" Sterling asked, his curiosity overcoming his discipline. "Did you really make that jump, the 2,000-foot drop into the chimney?" Alina smiled. It was a mischievous smile, one that took 30 years off her face. "Oh, heavens no, Admiral," she chuckled. "I'm terrified of heights. I climbed up the ventilation shaft from the bottom. Took me 3 days." Sterling blinked. Then the jump, the ghost drop. "I made that up for the simulation," she winked. "I wanted to see if you boys were crazy enough to try it." She pushed the door open. "It's good to know that bravery is still in abundant supply, Admiral, even if common sense isn't." With that, the Iron Hawk walked out of the bunker, leaving the most elite warriors in the world staring at the empty doorway, realizing they had just been schooled, saved, and pranked by the deadliest grandmother in Virginia.